one of the great challenges we have with this particular terrorism question is this. We're private market people. We're free enterprise people. We do not want to cede anything that does not absolutely have a mandate for cessation to any government, the United States government or state governments. We want as much of the architecture of the private insurance mechanism to be private for as long as possible. But in this area of terrorism insurance, because we have no history and we have no intelligence, if you think about it, part of the process of being able to provide insurance depends upon what you can determine to be a level of risk based upon presently existing information. We have no presently existing information, and it's not going to be provided to us because it's classified and only known by law enforcement and intelligence agencies. So planning for it is very, very difficult and challenging. And I think all of this mutual effort, from the self-evaluation, which may appear to be a step modest in the minds of some, I think critically important over the course of time, would be supplying the kind of intelligence quotient from that perspective that we don't presently have.
I'm Dan Sharp. I recently joined Unisys to lead their business resilience. And when I tell people my new title and that I'm coming to spend the day here in Washington on Resilience Day, I'm getting a kind of a quizzical reaction. Isn't that just the latest buzzword for common sense? And so my question to you is, what have any of you done differently as a result of the resilience approach that you wouldn't have simply done out of normal, intelligent common sense?
Great question. Who wants to tackle that?
Well, I can tell you from our perspective, what we do every day is everything from introduce legislation to argue with Congress about overcoming this process of denial. I mean, really, when you're talking about the self-evaluation discussion we just had, it's meant to create a different psychology, to change the way people think about going about managing risk or taking account of how much risk there is in their individual lives. And our biggest challenge is that there's a denial of that process virtually every single day. When it comes to talking about people, for instance, let's take one example, moving into the state of Florida, 1,400 people a day or thereabouts move into the state of Florida. Probably to a certain extent, not paying close attention to what it is it's going to take to be able to live safely in the state of Florida. And frankly, there are policymakers there who don't necessarily advise them accurately or don't get engaged in comprehensive planning such that you have everything from appropriate zoning to the kinds of evacuation plans that are needed and necessary for people to address issues in the middle of a calamity. So you put your finger on the issue, and that is there is a certain level of denial or a certain belief that this just simply won't happen to me or to us or to this country or at this time. And so what we do is to try and constantly focus advertising dollars, policy making, arguing with those who hold political office every day. It's been a lonely enterprise, to be very honest with you, and so we're delighted to have a great many more allies, and we're particularly grateful to the Council to be focusing upon this particular issue.
All right, second panel is going to address this in more detail, so yes, please identify yourself.
Hi, Sandy Bear with Ridge Global. I'd like to ask the panel to talk about incentives, especially those companies that are publicly held. What's the incentive to take care of security and resilience in terms of the impact on Wall Street?
When you say the impact on Wall Street, you're talking about...
Does it impact shareholder value? Does it have an effect on your stock price, that you're doing a better job of being more resilient, that you've done CT-PAT compliance, that you've done all the right things to be a more secure and resilient company? Does that have an impact? Is there an incentive especially amongst the bigger corporations, that this makes sense?
I think the reality is that whether it's a written down or just there's an intuitive feel that if a company hasn't addressed some of those issues, I think the sell side analysts really haven't I think done I got to be careful, it's my industry, but I don't believe the sell-side analysts have looked at it as strongly as they might, or they should. I think they react also after the fact. Well, if you're a bank, well, how did that loan officer put on $280 million of bad loans? Right? Well, guess what? Your stock is going down. And so then they'll start to ask questions of other banks. What do you have? Subprime lending. We all know what's going on with that. I mean, there's an absolute meltdown in that market. And now the analysts have really taken a hard look, again, after the fact. All the signs were there. Buy-side analysts did a better job. All the signs were there that the capacity to take on these bad loans was just not there. And so it does affect it. I think as it gets more and more structured, and that people can, and I hate to use the word check off a box, but effectively that's what it is, that ISS and some of these other people will, I think, take a stronger look at that.